Hi, I'm Bill Cebak. I'm an executive search consultant, headhunter, recruiter, career coach, and I'm here today to talk to you about 40 tips that I've learned over the last 30 years to help you write and present the perfect resume that will land you your next dream job. So let's get into it right now. Okay, what is a resume? Well, a resume is your calling card with the business world. It's your business card. It's your digital representation of who you are and what you've achieved in your life. It's your most important self-marketing tool. The purpose of the resume is to highlight your achievements in a way that connects with the reader, with the audience, and principally answers the question, why should I hire this candidate? And can this person do the job? If so, how well will they be able to do it? So in other words, if I make the investment in this particular candidate, will I get a great return on my investment? You have to be your own brand champion, and your resume is the very first element or item that your new employer will see on your behalf. Okay, let's talk about the format first and foremost. Well, it should be light and readable. It should be presentable. It should make the reader want to pick it up and read it. And it should be formatted to 1 or 2 pages. Over the last 30 years, I've seen a variety of lengths of pages in terms of a resume or a CV. And I'll tell you that if you can spend 5 or 6 or 10 or more pages on a resume, but people are going to fall asleep. So you want to be succinct and to the point, and pretty much, over a 30 or 40 year career, you ought to be able to express yourself in 1 or 2 pages. Now, if you're a brand new person, you're just transitioning out of college or high school or out of your first job, then by all means, 1 page will suffice. But 1 to 2 pages should be your limit. The resume needs to have a clean look. It needs to be inviting, right? Unless you're an artist, you don't really need to have a glitzy or a super artistic or a super flamboyant resume. The thing that's going to get you hired are your functional skills and how well you execute the jobs that you've had, not a flashy resume. So make sure it has a clean look. Make sure it's inviting. Now, on the very top of your resume, you ought to have your name and your contact information. Your address really isn't important anymore, especially if you're looking at opportunities that are out of state or out of country and are pretty much going to be remote. You don't necessarily, or even just across the town where you live, for example, you don't want to give a potential employer the bias of excluding you based on your current location. So I'd keep it to your name and contact info. Point number 7. Let's talk about your email address. The email address is super important. It should be relevant. It should be professional and appropriate. If you are an engineer, you don't want to have an email address that says, Bob's Beer Guzzler 32 at Gmail, right? If you're a doctor, you need to have a professional, sounding email, reading email address. And this is self-explanatory, but, every now and then you get that one person that thinks they're being cute or funny, and it's just an inappropriate email address. So take the time to think about a professional email address and, get a secure one for yourself and use that. Okay, the look and the feel. Point number 8, the look and the feel. Should be a simple layout. My recommendation is a simple layout. It should have great appeal. It should be professional. You don't really need photographs or any kind of graphs to highlight your data. You're going to use data points, but you don't need a lot of graphics in your resume. Unless, of course, if you're a graphic designer or an artist and you want to demonstrate by example some of your skills, by all means, that's certainly viable. But overall, you wanted to have a professional, inviting feel. Point number 9, you want to use reverse chronological order. And remember to keep it simple. Don't be cute. And start with your current occupation and work backwards all the way till you get to your education. In terms of font, I would use an 11 or 12 point font, something that the reader can see easily. Be straightforward. Pick a font that is New Roman or Helvetica, or one of the ones that are simple and not overly flamboyant or flourished. Now, here's something a lot of people don't take advantage of, is that they don't insert links into their resume. Now, usually you're submitting your resume these days electronically, so why not take advantage of putting live links into your resume? Things that come to mind would be each company that you've worked at. Put a link for that company. So if that employer wants to explore that organization and find out a little bit about where you've worked, give them a link to do that. Make sure that you link to your LinkedIn profile. And as an aside note, make sure that your LinkedIn profile matches your resume. Because if it doesn't, if it has inconsistencies, those inconsistencies alone could be enough to disqualify you from further consideration. Okay, point number 12, keynotes. Make sure your LinkedIn profile exactly matches your resume, because there will be an HR person at some point that's going to go through line by line by line and look at everything in your resume and look at your LinkedIn profile. So take the time to, make sure that they are the same, okay? All right, now, make sure that you spell check and proofread your resume. Have another person do that for you as well. 2 sets of eyes. It's better to be safe than sorry. One of the quickest ways to get eliminated from consideration is to have spelling errors in your resume, and not having spell check properly, not using good English. So make sure that you do that. That's point number 13. Point number 14. A couple of things that you don't need anymore. You don't need a summary section, and you don't need a skills section. These things, it was very prevalent in the 80s and the 90s, and it's kind of a holdover now. It just takes up space. Nobody cares. You're going to grab attention by how well you've done your job, and talk's cheap. If you say you're a great team leader, and that's kind of a cliche, right? You're a fast learner, that's a cliche. Those are things that you don't need summary section or skills section. Please, by all means, don't put in a cover letter. As a headhunter, I automatically delete cover letters. I never read them. It's not important. I just want the facts. I want the facts as you present them. I want to read those. I want to study those. I want to learn about who you are. I don't need some, page and a half letter highlighting all that stuff. I'll figure it out for myself. Number 16, don't put references on your resume. It's assumed, it's an assumption that every hiring manager will make, or every HR person will make. If they need references from you, they'll ask for them. So don't take up the valuable space on those 1 or 2 pages. Number 17, don't put the names of your dogs and your cat and your goldfish and your wife and children. People don't need to know your marital status, your parent status. It doesn't really matter unless it's a critical element to the job. You can talk about that in an interview. But look, this is a document that you're writing. It's semi-private. You're sending it to person A, but you don't know how many times that's going to be forwarded on in an organization. And, there could be inherent biases that you're not aware of. It gets to a cat lover who had a bad experience with a dog, and you're a dog lover, so, you don't get further consideration. The craziest things have been known to happen in preventing people from getting interviews. So let's be on the safe side here. Okay, point number 18. What you did 20 or 30 years ago, or 40 years ago even, is not as relevant as what you've been doing for the last 3, 4, 5, 10 years. So make that the focal point. Give it more attention in your resume. It has more relevancy, it's more current, and the people that are going to be reading your resume and evaluating you for fitness for duty are going to be thinking in those terms. How current are this person's skills? And can we rely on this person to be functionally literate in today's day and age with what we've got going on in our business? Point number 19, content. Your responsibilities are important, but your achievements rule the day. Your responsibilities are important, but your achievements rule the day. Most people naturally, when they write a resume, they talk about their responsibilities, what they were supposed to be doing. They never talk about what they've done. They don't really want to spend the time to think about how well they've done what they've done over the length of their career, when in fact these are the most important elements of your resume. This is the content section, and we're answering the question, why should we hire this person? So we'll talk about a little bit more detail how to express yourself in the terms that the employer's looking for. But this is super, super important. I'd like you to think about the 3 to 5 accomplishments that you're most proud of in the jobs that you've had. In each job, you want to take the time, do a self-email, write a Word document to yourself, and really put the time in to think about the 3 to 5 things that you're most proud of in each of those jobs that you've had. And these will be the key points that we're going to draw upon to help you build the foundation of your resume. This needs to be readable. Point number 20. It needs to be readable. So use bullet points. Don't use paragraphs. If I get a resume that's in paragraph form, and I get them even this day, even today, I just pitch it. You've got to have bullet points. It's got to be a document that I want to pick up and read and spend some time evaluating. I don't want to read a book all day long at work. I want to read bullet points. Just give me the facts, ma'am, like they said in the Dragnet show. Just the facts, please. If you can't say it in a sentence, don't say it. So try to crystallize your accomplishments and get them down in a bullet point format and make it easier for your audience, the hiring manager or hiring managers, to make a decision on your functional skill set. Okay. Point number 21. Any date ranges should be specific down to the day, not the month. So for example, if you worked at Xerox Corporation from 2005 to 2012, I'd like you to write in there, well, I started June 1st of 2005 and I left December 17th of 2012. I'd like you to be that specific, because I'm going to look for your average tenure at an organization, months and days where you've worked, and then I'm going to look for gaps, and I'm going to explore these with you in the interview process. So I want to come up with an average over your career. You've worked 37 months, your average is 37 months, your average is 52 months, because I want to understand, generally speaking, how long you're going to be with me before you get bored and want to move somewhere else. Okay, point number 22. Pay honor to your work gaps, okay? Don't hide your work gaps. We all have work gaps in our resume, right? For different reasons. Address them, don't hide from them. And there are a lot of legitimate reasons for you taking time off from work. You want to take a sabbatical. You want to recharge your engines. You worked 8 years in a row. You only took 2 months vacation in 8 years, and you needed time off. So you ended that. Very common. You end one job, you take 2 or 3 or 4 months to kind of de-stress, reset your system, recharge your batteries a little bit, do some things that you always wanted to do, an art project, a rowing project, to take a sailboat somewhere, go on a cruise with someone you care about, and just recharge, relax and recharge. And these are all acceptable elements in the workforce today, where 25 years ago they weren't necessarily that acceptable. People wanted to see continuity of employment, continuity of effort. And but today, everybody has broken service in their resume. So make sure that you don't try to hide that. Now, if you're older, if you're, not the 45 is old, but if you're 45, you're 55 or 60 or more, don't try to hide your age in your resume. Okay. Now, how do we see that? Well, we see that where people neglect to put the dates of their degree. Okay. So it says, oh, I went to Fairleigh Dickinson University. I studied economics, but there's no date. Well, some HR person down the line is going to be verifying your resume, where you went to school, when you went to school, what your degree was, and when you got it. So you might as well just address all of the issues, pre-close against the objections, and say, look, I graduated in May of 1984. In my case, I went to the U.S. Naval Academy. I graduated almost 40 years ago, and in May, and I got a specific degree, a Bachelor of Science degree. So I want to put that on my resume so nobody can have any question about where I went to school, when I was at school, and what I studied, and did I graduate or not. Now, if you did not graduate, do not present yourself as having had graduated. Okay, so you would say attended these dates. Okay, don't put in a BS degree or an MS degree if you left before you actually got the degree. First of all, it's dishonorable to do that. Secondly, someone's going to fact check all your submissions, all your paperwork submissions, and if you start a job and they give you a background check after you start. So in other words, a lot of companies will do continued employment upon successful background investigation. So you could already start, and they will fire you if that background doesn't come clean. Okay, now let's talk about point number 23. When you list a company, I'd like you to list the full name of the company, your position at the company, and the dates that you were there. From the day you started, so month, day, year, to the month, day, year you left. Look, we all leave companies for a variety of reasons. Sometimes we get laid off, sometimes we quit, sometimes we're fired. Happens to everybody. Athletes get fired all the time. Actors get fired all the time. Musicians get fired from bands all the time. It's a part of life. Just present the reality of it. You don't need to hide that. There's no shame in being fired. Now, look, if you did a bad job, you're going to have to be accountable for that at some point. But, that will come out in further discussions, and there'll be opportunities to rectify, what you learned and all those kinds of things. If you have gaps in the resume, let's address the gaps. That's the point there. Address the gaps. And you'll feel better about it. The employer will feel better about it. And it's just it's the right way to go about presenting yourself. If you left the workforce, if you were fired or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Just present the gaps and let the chips fall where they may. Okay, point 25. Be honest with your employer. Be your own brand champion. Be confident but humble. Be your true, authentic self in an interview. Don't put on airs. Don't present data in your resume that wasn't a result of your direct efforts. If you're in a team and your team did really well, you have to acknowledge that the team, and I was a member of the team, we did this together. Now, where do I see this most often? I see this most often in sales resumes, where you have a salesperson and a client service person. Now, the salesperson is responsible for going out, opening and closing the business, new business. The client service person is responsible for providing client service and maintaining the business, perhaps growing it organically once it's already been brought into the customers, to the client's, customer bank. But you'll see client service people trying to usurp the functional skill set of the sales guy when they weren't really the closer. They were the number 2 person on the scene. So make sure that you are honest about your contribution to the organization and to the, upholding the functional responsibilities that you were charged with. Okay, number 26, education. I touched on it a minute ago. Just be absolutely certain of your dates of graduation, what your degree was, and where you got your degree. If you went to one school for 3 years and then you finished up at another school for a year, you need to report that, especially if it was a school that's perceived to be lesser than. Now, you don't need to put your minor degrees in there, your associate's degrees and all those kinds of things, unless that's the only degree you have. And by all means, if you took a night course online at Harvard or Princeton or one of the Ivy League schools, think twice about putting that, adult education class on your resume. First of all, a degree from Harvard or the Ivy Leagues isn't what it used to be. And secondly, you'd be usurping the connection of attending that university for an adult ed course that you paid for out of pocket, and there were no entrance requirements to that course other than you could pay the fee. You could pay the $500 to take this course at Harvard or Princeton or Yale or Brown or wherever. Leave that off your resume. You can talk about that. Hey, I got this negotiating skills class. It was at Harvard, and it was something I wanted to do. There were no entrance requirements that I had to ensure that I met, other than they cashed my check. Okay, so don't embellish that part of your resume. I see it all the time, and it's a red flag that, look, if you're going to lie about that, what else are you going to lie about, right? Okay, number 27. If you're a polyglot, if you're a person who speaks multiple languages, you absolutely want to include that on your resume. We have a lot of bilingual households in the United States, Spanish and English. So you literally grow up fluent in both languages, especially when you get through college and you get a job or two and you're fluent in business language, in Spanish and English or French or Chinese. Then those are super valuable assets that you want to be able to make a pronouncement about to your potential employer. So please do that. The four biggest languages in the world, or maybe the five biggest languages, most spoken languages in the world, would be English, Spanish, Mandarin, French, and Arabic. So if you speak all five of those or variations of, then that could be very valuable to a large international corporation. Okay, number 28. Should I put my hobbies on my resume? Absolutely, yes. Put your hobbies on your resume. List your outside interests. They may connect with your new direct manager or other people in the organization to help you build multiple points of connectivity inside your new company. That's especially important during the interviewing process. If you do exercise, like you're a cycler, you lift weights, you garden, you like rebuilding old cars and those things, sports team interest and that sort of stuff. All those things are going to be important, especially in building new relationships in your new organization. Okay, point number 29. The content of your resume is the thing. It's the most important thing. So 3 to 5 accomplishments that you're most proud of. I can't stress this enough. It can be painstaking for some people to think about themselves because they feel like, well, I'm just being braggadocious. But the reality is quite the opposite. You want to be confident. You want to be proud of your accomplishments and humble at the same time. Talking about those accomplishments because they are your accomplishments doesn't mean that you're bragging. You're just talking about your accomplishments and in a way that is trying to weave an argument to show, based on what I've done in the past, I can do this again for you moving forward in the future. Now, an important question that an employer is always asking themselves is, will this candidate make my company money, or will they save my company money? And so when you're thinking of your accomplishments, I'd like you to have those two questions in the back of your mind as you're doing the effort of saying, okay, what are the 3 to 5 things that I'm most proud of in this job that I have presently? Did I make my company money in this? Did I save them money? Did I save clients? Did I save their money? Think of the impact in terms of monetary in monetary terms, because a lot of hiring managers think in monetary terms. Will I get a good return of investment with this person? And so when you're going through your list of accomplishments, please do that. Okay, you want to use action words, verbs like build, create, develop, sold, closed new business, build bridges with new clients, those types of phrases. And you want to support those phrases with solid data points. The more data you can put into your resume, the better. That's how I feel about it. The more data, the better. So if you're increasing sales, increasing revenue, increasing projects processed, there's a lot of ways to grab specific points out of your resume, or put out of your career rather, and put into your resume as data points that are solidifying your presentation to your prospective employer. They need to be, point number 33, those data points need to be believable, okay? You have to substantiate your claims. Now, if you grew a business, if you're a senior manager, you grew a business, 700% year over year, you need to be able to back that up. That's a big claim. Most companies can't handle that growth, but let's just say that you were and your company was able to. Well, that in itself, that one data point would be enough for a 30-minute discussion with a new employer. So make sure that you're able to substantiate your claims with valid data and be ready to articulate that example in a way that's very comfortable for you, so that it's just like, sitting at a bar with a buddy talking about a ball game, or, something you saw on TV. It's got to be matter of fact. So in other words, you want to rehearse this, not so that's rote, but so that you're very familiar with those achievements, especially if it's, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. There are things you did that are probably, in the back of your mind, but you haven't really talked about the challenges, the struggles, the remit that you had, and you overcame certain obstacles. Those are really important to be able to articulate, to show a pattern of success from job to job to job. And this is what gets employers super excited about candidacy of a candidate like that. Okay, number 34. This is tough. Try to avoid using cliches, phrases like I'm a team player, I'm a fast learner, I'm a this, I'm a that. It doesn't mean anything. It's just fodder. It's a waste of ink and waste of space in your resume. I'd rather you talk in terms of, well, I handled 4 new engineering projects in the fourth quarter of last year, and we came in under budget and ahead of schedule in each of these projects by X% or X days. That's much better than saying, I'm a team player, I'm a fast learner, or I assimilated into a client's culture to understand their issues. And these are the 3 or 4 data points that, came out of that. This is what the client wanted. This is what I was able to do for them. Okay. This part of your resume has to be relevant. It has to be current, because what you did for me yesterday, doesn't really matter so much as what you can do for me today or tomorrow. And it has to be viable. There has to be a point of connectivity between what you've done and what the employer needs to be done in the role. And these are the elements that are going to show your specific fitness for duty as is required by your new employer. So you want to have your resume geared to being able to answer those questions. Point number 36, tailor your achievements to the needs of the company, which presupposes that you take the time to do a little research, do a little Zoom info, Wall Street Journal, go to the website. Read a great section in a company's website is their news section. Read the news that they're proud of. Understand the history of that company before you go in there. Don't just respond to an ad and say, oh, I'd like to have that job. You might want that job, but understand what the job is, and especially in a much greater context of how does that function fit into this organization? Who's this company? Who founded it? Where are the founders? What have they been doing? How long have they been in business? Who are their top 10 clients? What services did they provide? What services would they like to provide? You can have, hours and hours of research on this company to have some level of competency when you go in for your interview. Most people don't take the time. That's why most people, don't make the cut. Okay, that was number 36. All right, number 37. Don't apply to every job opening just because you think it's a numbers game. It's very important. Take the time to learn about the company, the role, become informed. Look, interviewing doesn't have to be a numbers game. It's become a numbers game because so many people do it half-assedly, and they don't take the time to prepare themselves. And they apply to things that they would never even actually want to do. They're just applying to apply, so they can ramp up the numbers, and hopefully something sticks on the wall and they get a job, here or there. Look, when you're transitioning from one company to another, do yourself a favor and take the time to think about what you want to do versus what you need to do. And look, we all have bills we want to pay, and we need to bring income in, but we want to do it in a way that, in a company, an environment, and a job that we like, that could be a career, could be an avocation for us. And the company gets much more of us, and we get much more from the company. There's a much better reciprocation there if we take the time to do that. Okay, now let's talk about something that a lot of people feel uncomfortable with is, what if you've made bad decisions before in your life? Bad choices. And you have some, less than flattering things out there on the internet about yourself, or maybe the internet doesn't know, but and you need to talk about it. What are those 2 or 3 things? Well, bad credit would be one. Personal bankruptcy would be one. Social media issues would be one. Make sure you have a clean social media account. You've been arrested. Now, the 5th thing is, maybe you've been fired. Okay. Well, just because you've been fired doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. If you've been fired, there are probably things you didn't do well, and you want to be accountable for those things. In this particular element of the resume and your interview with the client, you don't want to put this down on the resume itself. You want to be able to have a dialogue about these things with the relevant hiring manager when it is appropriate. Okay. You don't want to just come in the first meeting and say, well, I've got this, this, and this, and I was in jail here, blah, blah. No. At the right time, with the right people, you release the information. Now, that will disqualify you in some cases for sure, but it won't necessarily disqualify you from every case. And my last point is, and we'll get to in a moment, there are going to be consequences for those bad choices. The best way to deal with those will be head on and just face it like an adult, and let the chips fall where they may. You may fall in love with a company and look, they don't like your credit history. You may fall in love with a company and, you got a arrest when you were 22 years old in college and got in a bar fight, and that alone is enough to disqualify you. So let your performance direct your employability and your future value for the firm. You want to leave with your side of the street clean, have a clean slate with the employer when it comes up. Hey, are there any reasons we shouldn't hire you? Well, look, I had this arrest when I was in college. This is what it was. It was a misdemeanor. Or hey, I had a bar fight, or I had to go through, bankruptcy. Here were the things that were involved in that. Get it out on the table. Keep your side of the street clean. And look, point number 41 is this. Many people will not hire you or even interview you, okay? But it only takes one company to get excited about you and give you a job offer. So if you incorporate these other 40 elements into your resume, you're going to position yourself to maximize a successful outcome as your own brand champion. And that's what we want you to be able to do, is to be your own best advocate. Now, you might have some other questions. You might want to talk further. My email address is bill@orbitalsearch. You can smash the like button. Please subscribe. That will allow me to help more people than just the two of us. And I look forward to you coming back and seeing another video. Have a great day.